Hail and well met, traveler. Welcome to the tavern. Did you know this is the place where more than half of the greatest adventures in history have begun? But before those adventurers took their first steps, they watched and calculated who would join their party. Why, look over there. There's a mighty barbarian from the Frozen Lands. Strong, mighty, full of honor and wisdom. I happen to know that one. They go by Matt Rossi. And look over there to the right. That woman working away on her mechanical dog. She's cunning, witty, and I've seen her bounce more than her fair share of ne'er-do-wells out of here before I can even blink. I happen to know that she goes by the name Liz Harper. And me? Oh, my name's Joe Perez. And I'll be your tavern keep. Welcome to Tavern Watch. Hello, and welcome to Tavern Watch, a discussion about all things in the gaming space. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Perez, and joining me, as always, are Liz Harper, our boss, and general enjoyer of things that are Artificer, yes?
Yeah, yes. I still have to wait until August. That's forever away for the official D&D Artificer to come out, but, it's coming. Probably.
And then joining us, as always, is Matt Rossi, the barbarian in all aspects. How are you doing there, Matt?
Yeah, bad. I'm fine. Let's go. brain not work.
And Phil will be joining us again. We don't have a class for Phil quite yet. We'll figure that out at some point, I am sure.
Yep, probably wizard. The traditional giant nerd, I guess.
Fair enough. Well, let's start as we always do with the wonderful topics of, well, what are you reading right now? So, who wants to start? Anything special on your desk or plate? Phil, you're usually reading something.
I am. So in this case, what I am reading is a new supplement for Fabula Ultima, which bills itself as a TTJRPG, a tabletop game designed to specifically emulate Japanese role-playing games. They have put out the third in their series of what they call atlases, which is a so the core rulebook for Fabula Ultima is pretty generic. It's like here's what this role playing game kind of is, and here's kind of a core of everything. And then they have what they call atlases, which are like a more specific genre that also emulates specific types of games. So like they have the high fantasy atlas, which is exactly what it sounds like. The techno fantasy one, which leans more towards like games like Phantasy Star, and they have a new one coming out at Gen Con this year, the Natural Fantasy Atlas, which I don't even really know how to describe it. Their definition of it is really different compared to usual. I don't even know if I would describe it as similar to rustic fantasy, like Legend in the Mist, but it presents some neat new character options, and I noticed that the PDF for it was on sale well ahead of Gen Con, meaning Gen Con is basically just here for the physical copies. So I bought the PDF of that, and I've been browsing through it. My favorite is that it adds a new character class that you can pick, which is the Gourmet, which is think your typical JRPG character who is mixing ingredients and whipping something up in the middle of combat and then force feeding it to an enemy to, I don't know, light them on fire or something. So yeah, I've been rereading through Fabula Ultima. I'm kind of like permanently cycling one of three games that I'm thinking at all times about starting a longer running campaign of, and Fabula Ultima is kind of at the top of the list right now.
Well, fair enough. Liz, you got anything on the desk?
Well, I'm still reading up on Daggerheart now and then. I've been watching Critical Role's doing a playthrough of an Age of Umbra campaign, which is one of the Daggerheart settings, so I'm trying to understand everything that's going on. I also picked up for free RPG Day, which was last week, I believe, a demo booklet for Otherscape, which is by Son of Oak. It's a mythic cyberpunk RPG, and I really enjoyed Son of Oak's system when we played Legend in the Mist. That was really fun and interesting. So they also have Otherscape, which is cyberpunk, and what's the other one? City of Mist, which is urban fantasy noir, which I am really interested in. I might have to pick that one up.
Matt, have you cracked anything open?
I've been reading the Fallout RPG, and
I'm in.
part of that is just because I like Fallout, but also because I kind of on this weird kick of different ways to do post-apocalypse and to do like, do you do like an actual post-apocalypse where the apocalypse happened, or do you do it like I remember talking about this with Joe, but it might have been like the whole group. I still think to this day that Cyberpunk 2077 as a video game is a Fallout game. It's just in slow motion. It's the apocalypse is happening very slowly, and to be fair, I also think that the world we live in is somewhat post-apocalyptic. It's just, again, very slow. It keeps happening. It's just happening, not so much in nuclear bombs raining down on us, I hope. Knock on this wood here. But for some reason that made me go back and get Gamma World out again. Because I've got all the Gamma Worlds. I don't know if people know what Gamma World is. It's basically it's sort of the first real serious science fiction / science fantasy game that TSR, Tactical Studies Rules, put out back in the early 80s, and then they every so often they put out a new version. They used to do it almost always as its own game, but then they did it. I think the last time they did it as a 4th edition D&D adaptation. And they haven't done anything with it since. I don't think they ever will do anything with it again. But I like looking at it just because of all the stuff there's stuff in it that Fallout obviously takes. Like there's a group of like people who want to control technology and who wander around calling themselves knights, and it's like it's the Brotherhood of Steel. They're practically identical. So I've been just basically running through and comparing them and the ways that each one is superior. Like I think that Fallout is a much more easily understood game world. Like Fallout, you know what they are. You know what everybody is.
It also has a lot of name recognition. That's part of it.
Yeah,
it's been around for a while, and it's been a big video game franchise. So you say.
Yeah, whereas in Gamma World has the Batters, who are talking badgers who are evil. And it's like Fallout has a little bit more nuance, plus the whole Alterna 50s aspect of it, like the future post-apocalypse as imagined in the 50s sort of sensation to it. Whereas Gamma World is just throw everything in a blender and see what sticks.
Yeah, Gamma World gets pretty gonzo. We played the 4E version, and it is. I don't know if I would go so far as to call it wacky, but man, it got real close. Like especially the 4th edition one, it had some very randomly generated characters.
Well, yeah, that's the whole deal. Like the mutations, you can get a mutation where you just have a nose growing out of your chest.
Yeah, I think I forget what somebody was like. One of our characters was like a bird who like had a laser gun, like a Birdman with a laser gun grafted into his right arm or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was we did it one time for like a one shot. It's a game I still think about, in that it's kind of weird and gonzo and cool, but I don't think they'll ever do anything with it ever again.
No, it's pretty much it's done. But like I said, there's the Batters, there's like all sorts of weird stuff in it, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that you can see in other games that have come out. But also I'm gonna say this: the Fallout RPG is a surprisingly good system. Like I was not expecting it to be a good system. Like you can actually just play it.
Well, I mean, it's in the same vein as the Star Trek and a bunch of other stuff. Like it's the Modiphius stuff. So it's
is it one of those? Is it a 2D20?
Yeah,
it's a Modiphius game.
Okay, yeah, those are generally pretty solid.
And then
that's me.
I was gonna say the thing that I've been sort of kind of getting into is I just started reading through the Electric State role playing game. I like stuff like this, and yes, there is a movie on Netflix that I've heard is absolutely terrible, and that is not what this is based on. As a matter of fact, this is actually based on an art book that was in the same sort of like, I can never pronounce it, Simon Stalenhag.
Yeah, I think Stalenhag.
Yeah, so this is not the first game that's based off of one of their art books. As a matter of fact, if you've ever heard of Tales from the Loop was something that was born about by this super like surrealist, like 1980s esque, hyper modernized, like what if the retro future modernism of the 50s carried into the 80s type thing with a little side of weird. And the art book was absolutely phenomenal. Well, a few years later, about 3 years later, the Electric State was released, moving into the timeline up to about the 90s, where it's like it's a dystopian 90s at its most bleak. So like the gloom of Twin Peaks, the detached alienation from Nirvana's Nevermind, with a plot that reads like the X-Files and the Lawnmower Man is how it is described, at least the art book. And they released a tabletop game based off of this art style. And I actually really like that. I like this idea of art sort of informing a game and giving a direction for a game, because you can write rules all day long, and at the end of the day, rules to me don't matter. And as a matter of fact, like you're seeing that more common in a lot of the books that are released. We'll probably talk about this in a little bit, but like even Daggerheart has something about that in their forward, where it's like rules are by their very essence a framework. They are not necessarily absolute. Some people may consider them that, but it's sort of like just kind of to get you where you're going. And this is sort of like the epitome of that. It's based off of Free League's Year Zero engine. So Mutant, Year Zero, Tales from the Loop, Alien RPG, Blade Runner RPG. If you've played any of those, you'll know what this is about. And it's all about focusing on the journey and what you experience along the way and how that changes your character, how that changes your perspective. All on a journey of finding out who you are, who your friends are, and what you do when sort of what you think is reality sort of collapses around you. And I really like that. So this is something that once I'm done reading through it, may get thrown into the group of stuff we may be running in the future, because it's really
Absolutely.
neat. And you only need D6s to play it, because, you know, I like those types of games. It's real simple, and usually people have D6s. So, but yeah, that's what I've been up to, and hopefully some other folks will start reading stuff like that too, so I can talk about it with people, because it'd be great.
Also throw out there that if you want to watch some media based on Stalinhog's work, skip the terrible movie. The Russos should not have been directing that, and go back to 2020 when Amazon Prime did an 8 episode adaptation of Tales of based on Tales of the Loop.
Tales from the Loop, yeah.
Tales from the Loop, yeah, much better, but also note that was from 2020. You're probably never getting another season, but it was much better than the Electric State movie.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that's what we've been doing, and that's what I've been reading, and yeah, there you go. We normally go through the rest of these questions, but I think we've got enough to talk about that. I think we're just going to move on to sort of our topics, starting with, I think, the major one from today that I think we all have feelings about, is that DriveThruRPG delisted a totally not Star Wars game because of political messaging. Phil actually brought this up to our attention, so I'll kick it over to him to get the ball rolling on that.
Yep. So this game, the game in question is called Rebel Scum. It is published by Ninth Level Games, the same people who bring you the other polymorph games like Pigeons 11 and et cetera, et cetera. Rebel Scum does warn you up front that it is political. It is also an obvious homage to not quite to Star Wars and its action figures. There's the author's foreword asks you if you want to punch a space Nazi right in their stupid jackbooted space Nazi face. It tells you up front it's not for people who believe in white power, vaccine deniers, bigots of any kind, and crypto fascists. Like it's made no secret, and it's been on the platform actually for several years. But it appears that a few people took issue with the message in there, specifically with some wording of what Rebel Scum calls its enemy faction, the Republic with a K. And so people evidently complained, and DriveThruRPG took it down. And when asked about it, their partner relations lead basically said that, you know, if there are 3 reports, then they take something down, and also that they could not. They offered a compromise, which is to take the foreword down and put it on their code with a QR code for people to scan and go read it if they wanted to. And that if they kept it, they would have to leave political messaging alone in games from, quote, the other side, unquote. So they basically fired off a slippery slope argument and kept it down. So Rebel Scum is actually now kickstarting, and now also has the thing on their cover, the game that has been banned from DriveThruRPG, which is, I don't know if people are really aware of this, is also owned by Roll20 as of a year or two ago. So yeah.
I mean, the problem is that with anything like this, it is exactly a slippery slope. What, are you going to ban actual Star Wars games? Because this is just a different way of saying, okay, we've got good guys and we've got bad guys. And the good guys are rebels fighting an evil empire,
Yeah, especially considering, I want to just point out that this game has been on DriveThruRPG since November 9th, 2021. Like, it is not a recent thing. This is not something that was up there and it just missed a review or whatever the case is. No, it's been up there for almost 4 years. And it's very telling as far as why now all of a sudden it's become a thing that DriveThruRPG or really Roll20 is worried about.
Yeah, and there's also, there's I don't know. This whole thing is just a disaster. It appears that literally the entirety of the complaint is that they are calling their enemy side the Republic on purpose because, and I'm going to quote from the foreword here, I have called the Republic so that we can say I punched that Republican in the face. This is deliberate, end quote. And it appears that Roll20 is treating a political party now as a protected class that they can delist content for.
Is also this.
You want to be super sensitive about this kind of thing. The enemy faction in Star Wars, the Empire, has literal stormtroopers.
Mm-hmm.
The word stormtrooper.
It wasn't subtle.
Yeah, it's like they're the Schultzstaffel guys. It's not complicated. They are fascists. They've always been fascists. That's the point. You even have the ham-fisted, and I like the prequel movies. I've been on record as saying I like the prequel movies, but the ham-fisted George Lucas dialogue of "and so freedom dies with thunderous applause," it's not even trying to hide this. And the idea, oh no, Republicans get their feelings hurt, so we're going to ban this book. I feel like to a certain degree, it's just it's partially the crowdsourcing of what's objectionable. They just take it down because 3 people objected to it. I can get 3 people to object to anything.
Yeah.
That's three people didn't like it. Okay. There are 3 people out there. You name something and I can find 3 people who will tell you it's bad. The internet has proved that there are entire groups for this. So it's basically just Roll20 saying we throw our hands up, we wash ourselves of any responsibility. This is what happened because you the readers said that this was objectionable. It's just sad and weird. It's yikes.
It's the sort of thing that can embolden people to complain, to get content that they do not like or do not think is acceptable removed, and that is. That can be very, very bad messaging, and it can get a lot of diverse content, and it can be a real.
I think, Joe. I was gonna say it's very. I agree with you 100% straight up. Also, this is going to be really damning for probably DriveThruRPG. Maybe not at first, but as this story spreads among the tabletop community. Because it will spread among the tabletop community. I'm not sure if they've noticed, but the folks that tend to play these types of games and spend a lot of money on these types of things are not exactly shy about saying F you and going and finding another way to go get it, especially when they feel like things such as, I don't know, freedom of expression are being suppressed with some slippery slope argument, right? And I also think it's interesting that this particular company, Ninth Level Games, is going to have no problem finding other distributors for their stuff. As a matter of fact, I know for a fact that they've already linked up with Asmodee, who is one of the largest like North American distributors of tabletop products at this point. Currently has the largest warehouse in North America for this stuff, and I believe is linked with a lot of German-based companies. They already have the pre-order for the Rebel Scum 2nd Edition role-playing up and ready to go, right? And finding places to host and sell the PDFs elsewhere won't be a problem. And I think that DriveThruRPG and Roll20 is probably going to see some backlash from this. I think I'm done spending money there. This, and I know that I'm not the only one. I mentioned this at my shop, and a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, no, we're good. So we'll see, but it's such a weird move because I guess I understand trying to bury your head in the sand and not, and try to appease whatever, but like, no, don't effing do that.
Yeah, and I also want to emphasize that this is not something that happened this week, which is the wildest part. This happened a month ago and only came to light because of a comment that Ninth Level Games left on their itch.io page for this game from somebody who was looking to buy it and couldn't find it. And then it got picked up by sites like Rascal News this week. So this move has happened about a month ago, and it, like, I guess, I don't know. Ninth Level could have also been, shouting this from the hills, but apparently they actually took multiple steps to meet with Roll20 representatives to figure out if there was some way to work around this, and/or to see if they would rather not hide their head in the sand for those sweet fascist bucks. But apparently they seem to think that staying strictly politically neutral when all art is political is still a feasible position. So
plus the idea,
good luck, Roll20.
Yeah, and there's that argument of if we let them do this, we'll have to let everybody do it. And it's like, first off, okay, let's go. Put out the role-playing game that's unabashedly pro-fascist. And does Judge Dredd currently have a role-playing game? I think he does.
It does.
And he's absolutely fascist. The game's world, the world of the characters is one of like brutal, bleak, unabating fascism. It's not presented as a good thing, and that's the thing. Imagine you could ban Warhammer 40K for this. You could ban anything for this. The idea that, oh, well, if we let you do this, it's like it's absurd. Well, it's absurd to say that first, if we let them do this, we'll have to let everybody do this. Cats and dogs living together, hysteria. It's like, I'm going to just say this. I am never going to be particularly afraid that fascists are going to do anything interesting, artistically speaking. That they're going to put out a game and like I'm forced to engage with it because it's just so good. That's not going to happen. So go ahead, let them make their fascist game for fascists. That whole idea, that the slippery slope argument really bothers me because it is so intellectually dishonest.
It is, and there's more fallout from this too potentially to happen, right? Because now there's the company One Bookshelf, which is the parent company for DriveThruRPG, RPG Now, Wargame Vault, as well as several other community content based programs like the DM's Guild, as well as stuff for Fantasy Flight's games, the Genesis Foundry, are all done under One Bookshelf. A lot of those companies and a lot of those game types are not exactly afraid of political messaging. I don't know if you've ever played a war game ever at any point in time. Like Matt's pointed out 40K, it's not the only one. Kings of War, Conquest, Malifaux, War Machine, Hordes, they all have like very like political messaging inside of them, and they may not call it by the same names we do, but they're there, right? Like it is very clearly that. And if it's only the name that they're triggering off of, boy, that's shallow. But they also have a very deep partnership with Wizards of the Coast, and that is also extremely problematic. Wizards already has a ton of stuff, like just black marks on their name to begin with. Like Hasbro has not exactly been known for making good choices in the gaming space through Wizards of the Coast as of late, especially with like a lot of the D&D stuff and the role-playing stuff and the fan-generated content, all the stuff with the SRD and everything else that happened before. this is just another thing like, oh, you're a very good close partner with this company that wants to censor stuff. Well, they're probably gonna have to look at your content now too, or maybe they don't because you have that close partnership, and that's the way this works. I'm yeah. And Liz, you were saying something?
Well, I do want to tell people that if you are interested in playing Rebel Scum, which the book describes itself as an anti-fascist space opera, then you can still buy it directly from Ninth Level Games. That is ninthlevel.com, and ninth is the letter 9, thlevel.com. You can buy it in print and PDF there. So it's not completely impossible to find. It's just no longer on this huge platform for digital tabletop books.
Yeah, so I think that's our big news item. Does anybody have anything else to say about that? I guess.
No, I just hope that maybe this will spur the right people to maybe we can finally get an alternative storefront to DriveThruRPG. And I know someone's going to say, "What about itch.io?" Itch.io has the same discoverability problem as Steam, but now also for tabletop game.
Honestly,
I'd love to see another dedicated online space.
Yes, how about Steam?
Steam
has released at least 2 RPGs, 2 tabletop RPGs. They've released 2 of them. Why not more? Go ahead, Newell. Bite out some more money. Just seriously.
Oh man, Table Steam, let's go. But I think we can move on to less bad decisions by Roll20 News.
Well, I don't know about that because the next one is also sort of in an interesting space regarding that. Our first news item is probably also one of the bigger ones that I know a lot of people have been talking about. Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins have left WotC to go work at Darrington Press. So I'll let you guys go ahead and start with that one.
I do want to say that Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins left, and then I think Chris Perkins said he was retiring.
Yeah, Chris Perkins phrased it as retiring. He stayed retired for about 3 months.
And so just this past week, we got news that they're joining Darrington Press, which is, of course, the printing company that's involved in Critical Role that has mostly published board games up until Daggerheart. And, of course, Daggerheart is kind of the new hotness right now. So it is interesting to see that they have grabbed 2 of the biggest names in tabletop gaming right after WotC let them go. We've been seeing a lot of top tier talent walking away from Wizards of the Coast. So it's very interesting to see Darrington pick up these 2 big names, and you wonder what's next. What's next? They clearly have big plans for more tabletop. They're picking up these guys.
I can't wait for all the new playable kobolds that get killed like really quickly. That's going to be amazing.
Look, with that voice he was doing, they deserved it.
The thing is about this is that it kind of goes back to something we've been talking about for a long time, in that there's the old saying of inside everyone there are 2 wolves sort of thing, and it's usually one that does this, one that does that. Inside Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro, in relation to D&D, there are 2 completely different companies. There's the one that employs people that like to make role-playing games, and then there's the people who want to destroy that so they can try and sell you a weekly subscription to Dungeons and Dragons. These 2 forces are in opposition, and unfortunately right about now it feels an awful lot like Hasbro has completely thrown its full support behind the idea of commodification. In a way, it's sort of like the cash shop from Diablo Immortal. It is wild to see Perkins and Crawford just going over to what was not even an existing game company 2 years ago. This didn't exist 2 years ago. Maybe more than 2 years now. I don't remember the first Darrington Press game, but it's Daggerheart's been in development for about 2 years. It is surprising, and it does make me wonder, how much we've seen in terms of playtest stuff. When we did the Daggerheart game, we had 2 playtest classes.
There are 2 more playtest classes out. Daggerheart has been out a month, 6 weeks.
Yeah,
and
month and a half. Yeah,
And there are now 4 new classes in playtesting. 2 of the classes have already gone through multiple iterations, and there are 6 new ancestries and 6 new communities, all in active playtesting right now. This is not a game that is sitting still. This is not a game that released and is like, okay, we're done. This is it. Enjoy our game. This is a game with, it looks like big plans to keep growing. Whereas you look at Wizards of the Coast, they're releasing fewer books. They're losing all of this top tier talent. They have fewer future plans than they've ever had. They just killed their their big virtual tabletop project. I don't feel so much like Hasbro is trying to monetize it to death. I feel like it's being left to die by bleeding talent and having fewer and fewer releases, which is sad.
Yeah, they've, I was going to say, it wasn't, like, her name's not on this, but I think recently, like, the head of the D&D product line actually just left, too. I think VP of product, I forget her exact title. But, you know, I guess it's not a conspiracy until she also turns up at Darrington. Also, the timeline, Darrington Press was founded in 2020 and released their first, where they basically, it seemed like, were created to publish Exandria books before those started coming out in partnership with WotC. The Tal'Dorei setting Reborn was Darrington directly. And then 2023, as you said, they did some board games. 2023, they did Candela. Was when the first Candela Obscura material came out. So about 2 years doing RPGs. And to be fair, Jamie Crawford, to expand a little, Crawford and Perkins aren't specifically coming over here to work on Daggerheart, not even necessarily to work on Candela. They are here to help Darrington Press kind of grow overall as an RPG publisher.
Yeah, one is a creative director
Crawford,
and
sorry, one is game director.
Yeah,
which is good. They do actually have fairly different backgrounds, which I didn't realize until I was digging into this to write for the site. That Chris Perkins is creative director, and I believe he's the one who started at WotC back in the late 90s as the head of periodicals.
Yep.
You guys remember Dragon Magazine? Whereas Jeremy Crawford came on mid 4th edition as essentially like lead rules editor and has always been involved with the rules sides of the game. So it would not surprise me to see Jeremy Crawford's work more directly on some of these existing games, while maybe Chris kind of helps add new things to their roster. It's pretty cool, and I guess whether you like or don't like what they've put out right now, it's always cool to see somebody who kind of has the chutzpah and the talent to take a swing at Hasbro. They could use some competition, frankly.
Well, and I think it's going to be less taking a swing at Hasbro and more just picking up the pieces, right? Like,
Yeah.
And again, I and this is somebody who I sell a lot of Hasbro products, like that. I'm not going to like claim I don't or anything like that, but like looking at this, in seeing the release schedule for the different content and the length of time it takes for sort of like the stuff to come out and the uncertainty of the product's availability and how quickly things change, it's not the same company that it used to be. And we've been talking about that for a while. But I do think it's just very, I think Liz is more right. I think that a lot of the decisions are, it's a company that is slowly leaving its products to die. And maybe it's because they think that they can get AI to do the rules, or that they can, get AI to do art or and do the writing and everything else. I would not be surprised if that's an internal directive. And why a good chunk of people are trying to leave or are not terribly upset when they do get told to leave or that they're dismissed. So seeing folks move over to Darrington Press, while I may not be the biggest fan of Daggerheart as a product, I do think that having another option besides just Paizo and WotC is fine. I think that's healthy. And I think having another place where creative designers and RPG creators can go is a good thing. And seeing folks that were, incredibly important in the identity of D&D move on to something else. One who had been retired for 3 months and said, "No, I'm coming back." They either showed up with a truckload of money or they showed up with a mission statement he agrees with, and that's exciting to see.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. We also kind of have another pillar coming out soon. I didn't slip this in the notes because I didn't know the exact date until today, but apparently MCDM's Draw Steel is slated to come out in about 2 weeks, which will kind of be the third of our big tentpole releases coming out of the OGL fiasco. We had Kobold's Tales of the Valiant, which already came out. We had Daggerheart, which came out a month or two ago, and now we're actually looking at Draw Steel coming out in about a month, which has been I would say an interesting one to follow in development, because it almost followed like an even more developed in the open trajectory than Daggerheart did, which had a lot of very publicly available and well played playtests. Draw Steel has had, I think, the interesting pairing of Matt Colville's experience and vision, and then James Introcaso has been doing a lot of the rules side of it. And so it's been developed in the open on their Patreon. I think their Patreon backers actually might have had basically the final version of the game for several months. But it's looking like Draw Steel may release on or about July 17th. And that's another interesting offshoot of all this to come out. And again, give another entry into what previously would have been called the fantasy heartbreaker space, because these are the games people put out and they pour their heart and soul into, and then they never quite managed to live up to the 800-pound gorilla of D&D. But more and more, these heartbreakers are just looking like compelling games in and of their own.
Yeah, and I think that tabletop space has really shifted over the last. I mean, we can go as little as the last 5 years, right? More people are looking at other games that are not D&D. More people are looking for those smaller games, the heartbreak games. There's a more of an appetite for it now than there ever was before. So it's exciting. This news is really what it is to me. It's excitement for the potential future of the tabletop space.
Yep. Even if D&D, just kind of sits up there and does their 3 releases a year and doesn't generate the kind of excitement they used to, there's still a lot going on in tabletop to be excited about. That's cool.
Also, to be fair to D&D, they've actually had 6 or 7 releases on the schedule for this year. Although one of them, it's 2 of them are both Forgotten Realms Player's Guide, Forgotten Realms, Game Master Guide sort of thing. And one of them is a Lorwyn crossover for Magic the Gathering that they haven't given us a release date on yet.
Because they keep pushing Lorwyn back for Magic, and I think they're trying to line those 2 up.
Yeah, so
that makes sense.
It's not a ton of releases, and it's certainly nothing I remember when we were talking about I remember Tales of the Radiant Citadel, I think it's called, came out, and it was just one of 6 releases within that 2-month period.
Yeah.
And not just little things. Right now we're looking at the Eberron book coming out in a couple months, and that's supposed to be not a whole big adventure or source book. It's a smaller book that so it feels like releases have been scaled back. Releases have been spread out more. Of course, we had the 2024 edition that is famously still not entirely out and will not be out until late this year when they release the starter set, which I think is due out in
September?
Something like that.
So we're still July, August, September. We're about 3 months away from the starter set for the game that came out last year.
Yes, the 2024 edition.
The Heroes of the Borderlands starter set. Yeah, it's also named that, so I keep thinking it's an adaptation of the Borderlands games.
No.
Wrong Borderland. This is the Keep On, not the S.
I do feel like there is. I'm trying to think of the right word for this, and unfortunately, I'm not feeling right, so my brain's spinning like a hamster on a cage. But there's a definite sensation of we don't know. There's a line in of all games, Mass Effect 2, where they say at one point, this has generated a swift but confused response. And I feel like this is D&D right now is in the middle of its swift but confused response, where it's we know that stuff isn't going the way it was going, and our response is to kind of just do whatever we can think of, and we're gonna come up with all these different ways to slow things down. And I have to wonder if Joe's right about how much AI they're trying to use, and I haven't actually read anything yet that felt like it came out of ChatGPT, but I know that I'm probably going to sooner or later, because at one point they were straight up saying, we have all this great stuff we can mine with our AI programs.
That was Chris
Cox
Cox and his
has been
30
saying
to
that
40
for a
friends.
while.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
this.
I know we're going there sooner or later. So
I mean, I think the good thing about D&D, if you want to say there's a good thing about D&D right now, is that we have all of the rules for D&D, both 5e, the original 5e, and the 2024 edition are available through Creative Commons. Those cannot be taken away. We can use those for whatever games we want to play. They can be used for any kind of adventures people want to write. Those are there, no matter what Wizards of the Coast does, no matter what Hasbro does. They're out there, and there are still games being made for them beyond Wizards of the Coast. The community making games is out there, still thriving. And I think it's thriving even more since Wizards dropped the ball. So you still have so many options here, even if you just want to play D&D, if you just want to play 5e, which, frankly, 5e is the game so many people know. It's an easy game to pitch to your friends because everybody knows how to play it and you can jump into it really easily.
Yeah. And that's not to say that D&D is going to be drying up on any content anytime soon either. One of the things we did see, or at least I happen to notice, is that there's new content being produced for it still. In this case, there was a new Unearthed Arcana that's available that has 7 new arcane subclasses, which is, if that's your sort of thing, here you go. It's Arcana, Domain Cleric, Arcane Archer, Fighter, Hexblade, Patron, Warlock, Conjurer, Wizard, Enchanter, Wizard, Necromancer, Wizard, Transmuter, Wizard, which I'm just going to go ahead and say those should have been in the core book, but Tattooed Warrior Monk and Ancestral Sorcery Sorcerer. So there's still content coming out, and it looks like some of the stuff that people were wondering why it was missing is making an appearance back, although it is... again, funny to me that 4 of the main schools of wizardry were missing until just now.
I will say that these 4 have benefited from maybe a little more time in the oven. They all have changed in a fairly significant way, because these 4, Necromancer especially, were ones that maybe... So like Necromancer had a cool fantasy, but the actual gameplay of being a Necromancer, you didn't really feel like one until like level 6.
Yeah.
Whereas the others were all just kind of half-baked anyway, and they all have cool new features. Like the new Transmuter now gets a version of their, like... No, they used to get their Philosopher's Stone feature at level 14, basically. They now get a baby version of it at 3, so you immediately feel like you're doing something cool there.
And the Arcane Archer can use its ability more than twice?
Yeah, Arcane Archer now gets charges equal to their Int bonus. So another fighter subclass that also wants Int. The Necromancer actually like starts right off the bat with resistance to necrotic damage, which is a really strong feature. And then focuses on making undead thralls as they go up. Enchanters no longer have that creepy thing where they can enchant you by gazing at you. They do get some face skills right away, which is cool. And they get the ability to... I love this because wizards normally have super underused bonus actions. I know I'm going in depth on this, and I shouldn't. Immediately after you cast an enchantment spell using an action in a spell slot, you can take both disengage and dash as a bonus action. Your enchantment wizard casts an enchantment spell and then gets the heck out of there, which is cool. And conjurers have gotten a little bit more of a focus on teleportation, I guess, just kind of on the school of bending time and space. But they can also do it right away. Unfortunately, it's an action, but sometimes your wizard just really needs to Misty Step away. Yeah, there's some cool ones. There's also a tattooed monk, which is another cool subclass, which I think is new to 5e. It kind of reminds...
If it's not new to 5e, then it comes from something pretty old. I don't remember it.
I think it existed in 4th edition, and I think it was a premier class or prestige class in 3rd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. Yes, 3e. That's the one I'm thinking of. They're a little limited, but they're a monk. They're primarily there to do melee damage, but now this one can also diversify. Like you can... And that's a little bit more than just having a spell. Like if you have the Crane Tattoo at level 3, the guidance can't trip, but also when you miss with a flurry of blows, you have advantage for anything else for any other attacks in that flurry of blows. So, and Matt pointed out the Arcane Archer. That was always kind of an underwhelming subclass. They actually
Especially in
not just more, especially in 5e, not just more uses. They also don't have an arcane shot die, much like the monk's unarmed die, so that their arcane shots are also just more powerful. Period. So this is cool for the Magic Archer fantasy.
I mean, I don't think that the Arcane Archer even now is particularly overwhelming. It doesn't. I don't read this and go, "Oh my!" Everyone's going to want to play an Arcane Archer, but at least it's not ridiculously bad.
Yeah, if you want to have the fantasy of being like, I am, Green Arrow but magic, you can do that now, and it doesn't suck. You don't automatically look around the table and go, "Why am I just slightly worse than everyone else?"
Why didn't they just roll a Ranger? Why?
Why didn't I just pick Why didn't I just pick the Gloomstalker? It's so
Gloomstalker
good.
Ranger. I could have done that. I could have been an assassin rogue, but no, I decided I had to be an Arcane Archer.
Yeah. Also, and if anyone like me attempted to look at this earlier in the week and was 404ing, it is available in D&D Beyond. I have it open right now. I saw this news go out early in the week, and I couldn't get it, and it was kind of annoying because I really wanted to see what they did to the Necromancer.
I think also we should point out before we move on to other things that they also got rid of a lot of their talent that was working in fields that had nothing to do with putting out the actual games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, Todd Kenrick, who used to do all their videos, gone.
Yeah, I guess with people, I guess one hopeful way to look at it is with people kind of leaving out of the top, but you still have the people around who have the day-to-day work of making D&D. Maybe we'll see some new and interesting talent kind of step up and take the rudder, because I know that Crawford and Perkins specifically wanted to stick around until they got the 2024 edition out the door, basically.
Yeah.
But Wizards is still full of people who, presumably want to make a good game, not looking at you, Chris Cox, and your 30 to 40 friends who can't wait to use AI. So maybe we'll see some more, some people step up to kind of apply a new direction to D&D, which isn't a bad thing for a game to have after it's been out for a decade. Let someone else step up and steer the ship for a while.
Yeah. And then I just want to mention real quick here a little bit of other Hasbro news, because I think it's interesting, but also kind of weird. I talked about this the last time. Final Fantasy released Hasbro and Wizards released a Magic the Gathering Final Fantasy set, which is very well done, very, very good, but also what is called a Universes Beyond set. It's a setting that does not exist inside the traditional canon lore of the Magic the Gathering universe. And it is currently now the best-selling Magic set of all time, having just beaten Lord of the Rings, another Universes Beyond set, which released about a year ago, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, something like that. I think it was a year ago, and was quickly the best-selling set of all time. And again, because these are Universes Beyond, and it's not necessarily people playing the game that are buying these, driving those numbers through the roof. And because Wizards of the Coast is owned by a capitalist overlord, they see this and see dollar signs. So now we have more Universes Beyond coming out this year, as well as probably well into the future, with Spider-Man being shortly on the list here. The next set is in Universes Within, but then Spider-Man releases. Then Avatar: The Last Airbender will be out later this year. And they just announced a Sonic the Hedgehog Secret Lair set, which are specialty cards that are made primarily for collectors with art that will never be a full set, because sure, why not? So the identity of Magic, not just D&D, seems to be in peril. I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah, flux would be a neutral way to put it. Peril's an interesting one. Peril was the one I thought when I saw the SpongeBob SquarePants Secret Lair. It's like,
yeah. See, secret layers don't scare me as much, because those are like, okay, these are just like special printings of like cards that already exist. They're not new, like mechanically new. But like the Universes Beyond sets, the full sets are mechanically new most of the time. So like Final Fantasy put a bunch of new mechanics in. There will be new mechanics in Spider-Man. There will be new mechanics in Avatar: The Last Airbender. So like, it's, for one thing, this is the monkey paw curl effect, and I like to say, because in the 90s, I know when Magic was just starting, everybody's like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could have, Transformers in Magic or whatever, like insert thing here. And you got it. And now the faucet's been opened. It doesn't seem like it's going to turn off. But we'll see, because every integration, every Universes Beyond is a collaboration. So it costs them money and costs licensing. And the interesting thing here, and then I will move on, is that when I say that these are Universes Beyond sets, full sets, these are standard legal sets, which means that they now have a commitment to print these for 3 years, because standard is now 3 years long before things rotate out. So they're making these really large commitments and making a really large licensing like partnership with whoever they're licensing the IP from that they didn't before, because formerly Universes Beyond sets were like, oh, this is a Commander product, we print it until we're done and then we're done, or this is a Secret Lair, it's printed until it's done, printed and then it's done. These have to stay around now, and this is the first time we've started seeing this. So I don't know how this is going to work out and what that money relationship is going to be with the licensing IPs, especially with like Sony is pretty precious with Final Fantasy. And while this is really, really good, it couldn't have been cheap. Disney is not cheap, period. And they own Marvel and Spider-Man. And then the Nickelodeon, I think it's Viacom. I think, I can't remember, I might be wrong, owns Avatar: The Last Airbender. And when we talked with Brandon Conway about that, like when they were doing the tabletop RPG, they were involved. Like they had to sign off on things, and they hold that very, very precious. And same thing here. So like, I'm going to be really curious to see how Hasbro comes out the other side of this one.
Yes, you're correct. That is now, well, it was Viacom. Now it is Paramount. I guess technically still owns Avatar,
which is even worse.
Yeah, this will be interesting to see, because a quick anecdote about this from a friend who went to some of the releases for Final Fantasy. It's been interesting to see the reaction to some of these sets, because Square Enix was in on the development of this from the beginning. They were actually fairly hands-on back and forth with Wizards about certain things, even up to and including translations of cards,
and providing original artwork too as well.
Yeah. But it's been interesting to see people who are familiar with Magic but who don't know anything about Final Fantasy picking up some of these and not understanding why cards act like they do. Mm-hmm. My favorite example of this is Kain from Final Fantasy IV. As a unit, he basically betrays you. If you deal damage to an opposing player, I think you draw cards and then he switches control. And it's been an interesting reaction, because anybody who's familiar with the Final Fantasy story of Final Fantasy IV is like, oh yeah, obviously Kane's whole big story arc is he betrays people multiple times. But people who have no idea how this goes are like, why would I ever want to play this knight who immediately switches sides as soon as I use him to deal damage? It's been fun to see. But
yeah,
looking forward to your not legally distinct Spider Person deck when that UB comes out.
Oh yeah. So I think we'll move on from there real quick and talk about something that I think is also really interesting. We talked about playtests for Daggerheart with new classes coming out. Starfinder actually has a couple new ones coming out as well. One thing that was missing early in our playtests through it was tech classes. They existed, but they weren't really changed from the first iteration. So now we're actually seeing those get released, in particular the Mechanic and the Technomancer. So there's playtests of that, which I think is really, really interesting, because they are going to tune up those classes. They're going to try to make them feel more in line with the others. And I think that's really cool, because I always thought, and maybe Matt has a feel about this as well, maybe you do as well, Phil, but the technical classes in Starfinder were always some of the most interesting to me, because they sort of blended that mix of science and fantasy.
The Technomage, in my opinion, always had the most. There was room for a lot of different interpretations of how this is working. Mm-hmm. Like you could argue that this Technomage is literally using magic to control technology, whereas this Technomage isn't using any magic at all. It's all just technology. They just approach it in a magical way. Kind of like that Babylon 5 group, the ones that were like, they'd show up, babble weird, incomprehensible things, and like poof off, and they like, we're like magic people, but it's science. There's a lot of room for different interpretations of that class. I think it's one of the best designed classes, but unfortunately, when they updated to the new version of Starfinder, it broke the class. So that's not, that's to be expected to some degree. You're going to break stuff when you come up with a new edition of a game. And it's weird because Starfinder, the first Starfinder, was halfway to the Pathfinder 2e, which is the current rule set they're using. So yeah, I think to a certain degree, it was expected that they would break these classes. I am glad that they're finally getting them out. The mechanic is just straight up fun. It's a neat class. I don't have anything really to say about it, but
yeah, it's just one step closer to Pathfinder 2nd Edition full release, and I am excited.
I want it to come out because once it's out, you can use all this stuff in your Pathfinder game, like straight up. The rules on it will be completely. Currently, Starfinder requires a fair amount of adaptation to go to either Pathfinder 1 or Pathfinder 2. Like you'd have to make some choices and change things around. But the stuff in Starfinder 2 is going to be like straight up conversant with Pathfinder 2. And I like that because I would totally let people play a mechanic or a technomancer or any of them in my regular Pathfinder game. I would have no problem with that. I'd use the mechanic to be the artificer for Pathfinder. There's no reason you can't. So yeah, I think that overall I've really liked what they've been doing with the Starfinder playtest. Why the word playtest would not come out there. I just generally like how they've been adopting that thing that a lot of smaller companies have already been doing. And you mentioned it, Phil mentioned it with Draw Steel. Like these things are much more public than they used to be. I definitely don't think Paizo is even close to the level of allowing the players to access the game that MDM did. Theirs is kind of nuts, but it's still a pretty public playtest for Paizo, much more so than they've ever done before. So I am very interested in that.
Mm-hmm. This is one of the first playtests I can think of from Paizo where you didn't have to shell out to buy the playtest from them necessarily.
Yeah, exactly.
Liz, you were going to say something?
I do.
Good.
Yeah, I do want to say that this has actually been in playtesting for a while. They started, we played a game of Starfinder, which was using kind of the first version of the playtest rules. And as you all mentioned, didn't have all of the classes. And then they rolled out tech class playtesting in April, I believe, to add these two classes to the 2e playtest. And one of the great things is, as you say, you could download the rules without paying for it, though I walked into a store last week and I saw a copy of the playtest rules in a physical book that you could buy, and I was like, wow. Okay, wow.
Yeah,
but also, all of this was in Demiplane, so you could go into Demiplane and look up rules and search for things you wanted and use the character creator to make characters really easily. And I do enjoy Pathfinder, but there are a lot of rules and a lot of options. Same for Starfinder. So that made it much more approachable and much easier to test. So the actual books, the final Starfinder 2e books, are due out at the end of July. At least most of them, I believe. There is, the pocket edition, the books that are not slightly less gigantic. Those aren't due out until September. But the rest of them, the player core is coming out in July. Actually, I've been giving Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast a lot of crap for the lengthy D&D 2024 release schedule. This is also a staggered release with Starfinder Player Core, July 31st, Starfinder GM Core, August, and Starfinder Alien Core in October, and Starfinder Galaxy Guide. I don't know if that's part of the 2e release, but that's coming out in August also. It's not this year and a half we've seen for WotC. But
I was just going to say that
between these books.
It's a 2e product, but it's not a specifically part of the rollout of 2e. But it's just a book for 2e.
Yeah, but the thing I think here is I think I'm more okay with this compared to what Wizards did. Not because
it's all happening within 1 year.
It's happening within a year, but also like you have the tools already available for like running the game once the first book drops. And you can, like Matt just pointed out earlier, this is fully compatible with another game that is already fully released. So if you need GM information, you can look at the GM guide for Pathfinder, and it will have a lot of the stuff that you can potentially use. It may not be specifically science themed or sci-fi themed, but you'll have the tools to do rules and things like that, right? Like that stuff already kind of exists, that you have the ability to access it. And I believe all that stuff is available on the Archives of Nethys for free anyway. So like you have access to this information for free already to run the game once the first book drops. So I think that's the distinction that makes a big difference for me, because Wizards changed just enough with the way classes, stat blocks, monsters, experience, and everything else works, that you really couldn't do anything until you got the other books. And when you could do stuff, it was very, very limited to whatever was contained inside of those books. So I'm a little more okay with this. Not, I'm not going to cut them, and say that, oh, this is absolutely perfect because they're not all releasing at once, but they're within a month of each other. So like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and the least essential one, I would argue, is the one that's coming last, their Alien book, which I'm guessing is the Starfinder equivalent of the Monster Manual.
Yes.
You know what's right there?
Yeah.
The Pathfinder 2e version of their Monster Manual, which you can then reskin to be aliens.
Yep.
Yeah.
Easily the least essential of the 3 books, and it's the one that's not coming out within a month of each other. Yeah, 2 months, and you've got the 2 that you really need to run Pathfinder. Starfinder. Cool.
Yeah.
Also, I want Matt to run that game again so I can actually play it. I unfortunately had to miss the last one we did. It sounded like a complete blast.
I'd be more than happy to, but
I do want to get back into it maybe, but I'd like to do it once the full rules are out and we can see everything. This is a 464 page book. So it's hefty. If you buy the hardcover version, you could probably injure someone, possibly yourself, with it. And it's retailing at $69.99, which is up there, but also it's a 464 page book.
Yeah,
it's a huge book, and that's just Paizo though. I could defend my home with the Pathfinder 2e core rules.
Yeah, I was going to say the Pathfinder 2e core rule book is massive.
Guys, I'm looking right now at my bookshelf, and if we're talking massive, terrifying rule books that could kill people with contemptuous ease, I want to point you guys to Exalted 3rd edition.
No, you absolutely. You can bring that up as many times. I just want to point out that with like your book Exalted, and I will say with the Paizo books, when I spend $70 on a book, I feel like I've actually got my money's worth out of it.
Yeah, you got $70 worth of book there.
And I looked at the not to keep crapping on WotC, but like when I looked at what you got for the price of those books, it didn't feel like they were absolutely gorgeous books, but it didn't feel to me justifiable in the cost. Maybe that's just me. But
no, I don't. I have them right here. Aside from stuff like the Greyhawk map for no reason. I know we're going to Greyhawk
we know the reason.
For no reason.
We know the reason, because originally Greyhawk was supposed to be the default setting for the new world, and then they didn't do it.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a thing they could have done where they could have changed it to a Forgotten Realms map or something. But regardless, whatever. I do think that those books are. I hate to say this because we have been kind of down on WotC today, but I never saw the reason for the new edition since it's not a new edition. And say what you want about 3.5, but 3.5 felt like a significant change.
Yeah, it was massive.
That really addressed a lot of problems. It made grappling slightly less soul destroying to do. Like, I don't feel like the 2024 edition is significantly better than what we had, and that required a whole new series of 3 books to do this.
I do, for all my criticism, want to get in here and stand up for WotC, because while I think it was misadvertised as a new edition, these are books that bring together the rules from a bunch of different books. These consolidate rules from the original Player's Handbook, from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, from all of these different rule books are now together in a couple of books. So you don't have to buy these books and these rule expansions. You can just buy the book. And I think that after the game is 10 years old, I think that's a very reasonable thing to do. But they advertised it as a new edition and not just we dusted off the rules and put all of the player
Well-
rules in one book and put all of the GM rules in one book.
Yeah, and I mean, this is maybe my criticism of it, because like I felt like the advertising was not a lie until later. Like I think
Yeah,
everything
they
was
changed
really,
direction.
well, they changed direction after they fired 1,100 people. So
Mhm.
I'm relatively confident that played a role in the decision to not make this a new Eternal edition like they expected it to, and instead made it 5.25. Right. So like I just my 2 cents there, but I get what you're saying, and I don't want to take away from the fact that they are gorgeous books. I just don't know that $60 for something that feels incomplete.
You aren't wrong.
Feels
You are
incomplete.
not wrong.
Versus the $70, which is a little bit more, that I know that I will be paying for Starfinder. But Paizo has a wonderful history of releasing a book that feels meaty and complete and is not missing anything when a book is released. So, and I mean, to be fair, these are the same people that started making, 3.5. So I'm not terribly surprised by this. And then I just want to go ahead.
The D&D books are so gorgeous. The ones you get from your friendly local game stores are just gorgeous alternate covers. And well, I have my Pathfinder books. They're very nice. They are frankly nothing on these special edition covers from the Wizards of the Coast books. But there you are.
Yeah, and then I think Dragon Dells just released. I think we have it sitting on our counter right now. Gorgeous book. Would not pay the full price for it myself.
It feels difficult to give WotC money right now because they're not coming out with anything big and exciting. This year's release schedule, well, Matt did point out earlier that there are quite a few things coming out this year. It's just not an exciting year. And saying, hey, here's a book about dragons. Okay.
Well, here's a book with 10 adventures in it. Here you go.
Okay.
Like that's
fine. That's fine. I'm not super excited about it. That's fine. That's okay. I'm not rushing to pick it up.
Nope. I will say again that I was way more excited for this book when the original title came out as Dragon Anthology, and I thought it was literally going to be the anthology of Dragon magazine. I was very excited for that as a product.
I mean, honestly,
I'd be interested.
If they were to release something like that, I mean, that would be great, but I don't know that they will. I don't know that they own all of the rights anymore to all of the Dragon magazine publications.
I don't know either. I know because a lot of that probably goes to the people who aren't there anymore or who are deceased, and now it's down to their down to whatever their I lost where that sentence was going. Anyway, you're probably right. That's what I'll say.
I do want to just touch on base on real quick on at least a couple of other little things that are at least uppers or stories with a little bit of a lift to them. Cobalt Press is also not being quiet in what they're producing. At least they're not sitting idly by. They have their Game Master's Guide, which is releasing, which is a lot of stuff that some of us DMs have been doing for a very long time, now codified in a set of rules that you can easily reference for newer players. Like I'll bring up the skill challenge thing. If you've ever listened to our D&D live plays, if you listen to the recording that we did for my D&D game Otherworld, one of the things I had folks do was a skill challenge encounter instead of just a straight combat encounter. And while D&D does have supplemental rules for that, I don't know if they're in the books that released. I don't remember.
The last time I remember these being in a D&D book was actually in 4th edition.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
This was skill challenges were how 4th edition mechanically handled non-combat but still skill involved challenges or scenes or whatever. And I don't remember if these are hard-coded in 5th edition. There might be you can have them make skill challenges and try to make them do a set number of checks, which if that's a mechanic that sounds familiar, then you've probably played an indie RPG in the last decade and recognize the concept of clocks.
Yeah, and this one is releasing this as they jokingly call it Fantasy Races. Not because it's a book about fantasy races, but because it's a book about races in a fantasy world where zoom races, not like, oh, it's an elf. So it's called Chasing in the Inferno is an adventure inside of the book. It's in the Labyrinth Adventures book that is now in this, which is a giant relay race that requires you to have characters that, essentially are set throughout for handoffs, like you would exactly a relay race. But everything is proportionate to your skill checks. And so like, here are your obstacles. Here's what you need to do to overcome it. Here are your options. Tell me what you have with it. And it uses everything like your passive initiative, uses round-based initiative, which is a whole new initiative set that, again, I believe existed in 4th edition and has not existed since, but is being resurrected here. So like, it's nice to see some of the stuff that sort of fell to the wayside, finding a new home and being reintroduced to people who maybe never got to experience it, or that cool stuff that, you know, you could do with those things. So I'm super excited for that. I'm super excited for Cobalt Press releasing this.
I do want to point out really fast, one of the things Cobalt Press has done that's pretty cool is they've put out their own version of 5e that they allow. It's basically the rule system for Tales of the Valiant, and they allow anybody to use it. And they can just use it just pretty much the way that Creative Commons license for 5e and 2024. But what's really like is they say that you can create and publish your own Black Flag role-playing content with no chance of anyone telling you that you can't. So it's like right on their page, they're being snarky, and I'm down for it, quite frankly. I like that. So I just wanted to point that out. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm not surprised since they're one of the three I alluded to without explaining it, and just to kind of assume that our listeners knew what Tales of the Valiant was. So sorry about that. That's on me. But yeah, this was kind of the first out the gate after the OGL fiasco, and like they openly advertised that stuff for Tales of the Valiant is also compatible with 5e, but they also have that kind of a snarky thing about their licensing, which is I don't know, it's cool. I like them. Kobold is cool.
And then we have the last thing, which I think is a great way to sort of end it, is that there's a bunch of community-based and smaller company-based releases and content that is 5e compatible. Specifically, they call out 5e because we don't really have a new nomenclature to call the new game from. So 5e it is forever, eternity. Do you like orcs? Well, there's a book called Orcs and Orcs. You can go through all sorts of different flavors, variants of orcs and orc culture, and magic items based on orcs.
You like orcs. Yeah, we learned that you like orcs. We put orcs with our orcs so you can orc while you orc.
And
I love that they just call this book Orcs and Orcs.
It includes 70 new magic items along with it as well, which I'm super, super, super here for. You have fairy tale classes, which is slowly releasing various different old school fairy tales as playable classes inside of Dungeons and Dragons. The one that is highlighted here is Dreamwalker, which is basically, you know, what it sounds like. These are the ones that you would see in folklore that would enter dreams and mess with people in their dreams while they're sleeping. So that's really cool. The Clockwork Conspiracy is a steampunk D&D adventure timed, at least right now, as this is a homebrew, beginner-friendly one-shot adventure that is right before Eberron releases, which is perfect timing. So do you like steampunk? Do you like being in a weird city? Do you like mechanical spiders that you might have to stomp instead of regular spiders? Well, here you go. This is for you. And I like the fact that there is a massive, and this is not the only stuff. There's plenty of other ones as well. But there's a very healthy community of people making compatible content for Dungeons and Dragons. So even if, you know, Wizards shits the bed completely and just stops making anything worth picking up, people are still making stuff that you can that is new and interesting and potentially very, very cool for you to look at. And it looks like they're releasing it not through things like DriveThruRPG. So, you know, bringing it full circle, added bonus. Do any of you have any thoughts on that?
I'm in a similar vein. Another thing Wizards of the Coast is doing is on D&D Beyond. You're seeing a lot of third-party books that are then easy to use in the Wizards of the Coast character creator, or the D&D Beyond character creator. Character options like there are the Drakenheim books are all here. That's the game that the Dungeon Dudes were playing, which I think is really fun. One-Shot Wonders from Cobalt Press. They're not Cobalt Press, Roll and Play Press. Too many words in my head. There are all of these third-party things, including new classes. A couple of weeks ago, Matt and I were talking about how the Gunslinger Wizard D&D Beyond sent us an email about the Gunslinger class, but that's not something that Wizards of the Coast wrote. That's a third-party supplement that you can get through D&D Beyond. So I think one good thing about Wizards of the Coast itself producing not as much exciting content this year, we are seeing tons of third-party content available through D&D Beyond. And there's so much cool 5e stuff out there. So it's great. It's great. More games are great.
If we're going to talk about stuff D&D Beyond is doing that's good, so if I'm going to actually say something nice about Wizards here, I guess, the Ruins of Symbaroum got released on D&D Beyond. It's a complete setting book for a completely different campaign world. That's not one that Wizards owns in any way, shape, or form, and you can get complete access to it on D&D Beyond. And that's kind of nuts. And it's not the only one that they've done. They've actually also done the Malady of Mirnara. They've done quite a few. So yeah, it's interesting to see them doing this because it does have that ability to allow you to play other things in your Dungeons and Dragons. So yeah, I also think that the Dungeons and Drakenheim stuff is pretty good. Quite frankly, it's just straight up good. So.
I'd also like to call out the 5e compatible Lord of the Rings game that came out a few years ago is entirely integrated with D&D Beyond, and a more recent smaller release, Obojima, which is kind of a half fantasy, half modern Studio Ghibli-esque.
It's very Studio Ghibli-esque
game. Yeah, it's very Ghibli coded just from the art, but it is also again Obojima is on D&D Beyond, so. That's cool.
Actually, I just realized they have this thing that's a thinly veiled Monster Hunter tabletop game, like literally the Monster Hunter video games, but on tabletop, called Heliana's Guide to Monster Hunting. That's on D&D Beyond now too. It came out in March of 2025, so fairly new.
And also Humblewood from Hit Point Press is also on D&D Beyond.
Oh
so
yeah.
There are all these. One of the things that's so great about digital tools is you can go in beyond just having a PDF. Having a PDF is nice, but a digital toolbox like D&D Beyond, you can go in and search for things, search for abilities. You can add abilities to a character sheet without having 20 books sitting out on your desk and easily integrate third-party content into a 5e campaign. So I think it's really cool that they're throwing more content on here. And I do kind of feel like this is sort of shoring up maybe a weaker or less exciting year for D&D directly from Wizards of the Coast, because there's a lot of exciting stuff out there, just maybe a little less from Wizards.
The future is bright, just gotta know where to look. But I think that's going to do it for us today, friends. I do want to thank you for joining us. As always, Blizzard Watch is made possible due to your generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means that this podcast site and community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to our content, better chance at having your question answered on our podcasts or the queue, and an ads-free site experience. And again, if you have questions or stuff you want us to cover in any of our podcasts, be sure to send those in. You can email us at podcast@blizzardwatch.com. Specify the show that it is for in the subject line, as well as any special pronunciation of your name. You can also hit us up on Discord. We have 2 channels set aside for that. One is the Q and Podcast Questions channel. Pretty self-explanatory. Same rules apply there. And then if you are a Patreon subscriber, we have the Patreon Q and Podcast Questions channel, where we tend to look there first as a way of saying thank you for helping us keep the lights on. And as always, you can also message us through Patreon if you don't want to send us an email or message us on Discord. But with that, folks, we'll catch you next time.